Hello all, welcome to the course Lasers, Fundamentals and Applications. So in this course, we will study different characteristics of lasers, their types, applications, basic principles of lasers, etc. So this course is useful for students who are doing their MSc in physics, but it is also useful for students who are doing BSc or BE or BTech. So we know the ordinary sources of light. So the ordinary sources of light are ordinary bulb, filament bulb, candle or sun. We have different sources. So all these sources, they are incoherent. These sources are incoherent because the atoms or molecules which radiate the energy, that radiated waves, they are not in phase. So we know that coherence exists between two waves when there is some phase relationship between them. Two independent sources cannot be coherent. For the experimental purpose, we construct two coherent sources from the same parent source by using some slit arrangement. So for the experimental purpose, if we have some filament lamp or some spectral lamp, that spectral lamp, we know it is not coherent, and we cannot have two coherent sources from the same parent source. So for this purpose, what we do, so we construct two coherent sources from the same parent source. So we use two slits at some distance from the source, and now from this source, from these two slits, let's say this is S1, this is S2, from these two slits we can get the coherent light, right? Because both these sources, these are secondary sources, and these two secondary sources are now coherent because they are derived from the same parent source. So in recent years, some of the sources are developed which are highly coherent. These sources are called as lasers. Because of the high degree of coherence associated with the waves in lasers, they have many important applications in different areas like science, engineering, industry, technology, medical field, spectroscopy, holography, fiber optics and communication, etc. So let us see what is meant by lasers. So the word laser is an acronym for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Right? So laser, the word laser is an acronym for this phenomenon, light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. And laser is a device which works on this principle of light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Laser is a device which produces a highly monochromatic, coherent and highly intense beam of light. So let us see what makes the lasers different from the ordinary sources of light, or let us see the properties or characteristics of the lasers. These properties are, first one is the laser beam is highly coherent. The light emitted from laser is nearly monochromatic. The laser beam is highly directional. So high directionality. The directionality of the laser is often considered in terms of the beam divergence. So it has very low beam divergence. You can say very low beam divergence. Another property is the light emitted from laser is in the form of a beam, and that beam is highly focused, therefore it is highly intense. So the laser beam is highly intense, or it has high intensity. So these are some of the properties of lasers. That properties makes lasers suitable for different applications. Now let us move to our next topic, interaction of radiation with matter. So let us study our next topic, interaction of radiation with matter. So in order to understand the principle of lasers, let us consider the quantum processes that takes place in a material medium when it is exposed to radiation. A material medium is composed of identical atoms or molecules, each of which is characterized by a set of discrete energy levels. An atom jumps from one energy level to another energy level when it absorbs or releases an amount of energy which is equal to the difference between these two levels. We know that the energy gets absorbed when the atom jumps from lower energy level to the higher energy level, and the amount of energy which is absorbed is equal to the difference between two energy levels. Similarly, the energy gets emitted when atom jumps from or moves from higher energy level to the lower energy level. In this case also, the amount of energy released or emitted is equal to the difference between two energy levels, and the energy emitted is in the form of photon. Now let us consider a photon strike on a group of atoms, and let us consider two energy levels which are occupied by the group of atoms. So let us consider two energy levels, E1 and E2, which are occupied by a group of atoms. let N1 is the number of atoms in the lower energy level and N2 is the number of atoms in the upper energy level. In normal or thermal equilibrium, the lower energy level is densely populated. That means the number of atoms in the lower energy level are higher than the number of atoms in the lower energy level. That means in normal or in thermal equilibrium, so in the thermal equilibrium, what we have is the number of atoms in the lower energy level, or number of atoms in the lower energy level is greater than number of atoms in the upper energy level. When the photon strike on this system of atoms, if the photon has energy greater than or less than E2 minus E1, if the incident photon has energy lower than or greater than E2, then there is no interaction of this photon with the atoms. So if h nu is the energy of the incident photon, if it is greater than E2 minus E1, or if this h nu is lower than E2 minus E1, the difference between two energy levels, then there is no interaction. But if the incident photon has energy exactly equal to the difference between two energy levels, that is E2 minus E1, then this photon will be absorbed by the atoms in the lower energy level and the one of the atom in the lower energy level, and that atom is absorbs this energy and it goes to the upper energy level, right? So this atom get excited, right? So if the incident photon has energy exactly equal to the difference E2 minus E1, then one of the atom in the lower energy level absorbs this energy and it goes to the upper energy level, or it is excited to the upper energy level. So let us consider this process in detail. So I draw a diagram. So let us we consider this in 3 steps. So before transition, during transition, and after transition. Now let us consider the photon is incident on this system. So this photon is h nu. So if we have some atoms in the lower energy level, let us consider we have some atoms in the lower energy level. So before transition, all the atoms are in the lower energy level, that means at the ground state. When photon of energy h nu, which is equal to the difference between two energy levels, is incident on this system, this photon will be absorbed by one of the atoms in the lower energy level, and that atom will go to the upper energy level. So during transition, one of the atoms has absorbed this energy. So let us say this atom has absorbed this energy and it is now going to the upper energy level, right? So during transition, so we can say our atom is now going there and here. So after the transition takes place, one of the atom is missing from the lower energy level, right? So this atom has absorbed this incident photon and it is now in the upper energy level or in the excited state. So this process is called as absorption, because in this process the atom absorbs the atom in the lower energy level, absorbs the photon, and it goes to the upper energy level. So this is the process of absorption. It is also called as stimulated absorption. Now, this condition for which the atom is in the excited state is non-equilibrium condition, because we have seen in the equilibrium condition all the atoms are in the ground state, right? So this condition is inverted equilibrium, or it is non-equilibrium condition. That means our atom is in the excited state, right? And since it is non-equilibrium condition, the atom cannot remain there for long time, right? It has to fall back, and it has a limited time to remain in the excited state. So all the excited states, they have limited time for which the atom can remain there, and that limited time for which the atom remain in the excited state is called as lifetime. So it is called as lifetime. So we know that the lifetime of the lower level or the ground state is unlimited, right? The atom can remain in the ground state for infinitely longer time, but it cannot remain in the excited state for a long time. It has a limited time, and that limited time for which the atom remains in the excited state is called as lifetime of the state. So it is the lifetime of the state, right? Now let us consider next process, right? So in the next process, what we have now, our atom is in the excited state. So our atom, let us say our atom is here in the excited state, one of the atom, and it is okay, that atom is in the excited state. So we know that the lifetime for the excited state is limited. The atom can remain only for the limited time in the excited state. And after the lifetime of the state is over, the atom has to fall back to the ground state. Now let us consider our atom is here. So atom is in the excited state. After the lifetime of the excited state is over, the atom will fall back to the ground state. So before transition, the atom was in the excited state. During transition, now this atom, it will fall back to the ground state. So during transition, we can say it is fall back to the ground state. Now this excited atom has some excess energy, right? That excess energy that is absorbed by this atom, and that excess energy is released in the form of a photon, right? So this atom, when it will fall back to the ground state, it will release a photon, and that photon has energy h nu, which is again equal to the difference between two energy levels. So the incident photon has energy equal to the E2 minus E1. That is the difference between two energy levels. So this process is spontaneous process. That means we cannot control the process, right, from outside. So we cannot control the atom to fall back, because it has to fall back after the lifetime of the state is over, and therefore this process is called as spontaneous emission, because it has emitted a photon. So this process is called as spontaneous emission. Now, let us consider another possibility. So, we will consider another possibility in which again our atom is in the excited state. Right? So, our atom is initially in the excited state. Now, if again some photon of energy h nu equal to A2 minus E1 is incident on this system, right? If some photon of energy h nu equal to E2 minus E1 is incident on the system or on that atom, then the incident photon triggers the atom in the excited state. So, before this spontaneous transition takes place, if the incident photon strike on the atom in the excited state, then this photon triggers the atom in the excited state to fall back to the ground state. Right? So, in this process, again, this atom will fall back to the ground state. Now, in this case, two photons will be emitted. Right? So, atom is now in the incident, atom is now in the ground state. So, in this process, two photons will be emitted, and these two photons, they are identical in all respects. So, two photons, both these photons, they are having the same energy h nu. That means their frequency of radiation is same, their wavelength is same. Right? So the two photons are identical in all respect. That means they are coherent, they are monochromatic. Right? So monochromatic means they are having the same frequency or wavelength. They are coherent means they are in phase. Right? So this process is called as stimulated emission. This process is called as stimulated emission. So in the stimulated emission, what we have seen, so in this stimulated emission, what we have seen, the incident photon triggers the atom in the excited state, right? And this atom fall back to the ground state, and in this process two photons will be emitted. The one photon that is the incident photon, and another photon that is the excess energy this atom have in the excited state. Right? So in this process, what we have seen, that when the radiation interact with the matter or with the atoms or molecules, so there are different processes that takes place in the material medium. In the first process, what we have seen, in the normal equilibrium, what we have, the number of atoms, the lower energy level are higher than the number of atoms in the upper energy state. And when the incident radiation having energy equal to the difference between two energy levels, in that case, the incident photon will be absorbed by the atoms in the lower energy level. And that atom goes to the excited state by absorbing this photon, and this process is called as absorption or stimulated absorption. We know that the excited state has limited lifetime. That means if the lifetime of the excited state is over, the atom has to fall back to the ground state. So if the lifetime of the excited state is over, the atom in the excited state will fall back to the ground state, and in this case it emits a photon of energy equal to the difference between two energy levels, E2 minus E1. There is another possibility. Before the spontaneous transition takes place, the atom in the excited state, if it is again some photon strike on the system, that atom in the excited state get triggered to the ground state. So the photon will fall back to the ground state. In this case, the atom will fall back to the ground state, and in this case, two photons are emitted and they are identical in all respects. Right? So these are the processes that takes place in a material medium. Thank you very much.